James is performing at a benefit tomorrow night in town here for Joe Biden. James Taylor, welcome. It is great to see you.
Thank you, Jim, Margie.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in. So tell us how you ended up going up to Lewiston, Maine. How did that come about?
A friend of my better half, my wife Kim, got in touch and said, this would be a good idea. Would James be interested in going up? And I guess, I do a national anthem and been asked to do it here and there. So would I come up and do an anthem at the football game? It was sort of the community returning to starting the road back to some kind of normalcy after things have been shut down for about a week.
I think it was the Red Eddies and the Blue Devils, which I loved. And
Red Eddies. Yeah.
A lot of artists in the last few weeks, people like Richard Blanco, who was an inaugural poet for Barack Obama, Keith Lockhart, who I think had something to do with you meeting Kim, by the way. I think had a Boston Pops connection. Okay. Have all said the same thing, is how important the arts in general and music in particular are to healing in all kinds of settings. I'm assuming you subscribe to that notion, James Taylor.
Yeah, sure. I do, because I get a lot of feedback from, maybe that's the wrong word for it. I just get a lot of a really important communication from people out there that music and not only mine but just in a general way is a way that it can be really like therapeutic and return people to a better place.
By the way, there's some editor in the control room who has already corrected me 30 seconds into this interview to tell me that it wasn't Keith Lockhart, it was John Williams who brought you two together. Same institution,
right? Different
leader.
That's right. Boston
I've made
Pops.
a correction.
That's right. Well,
that'd be your wife who corrected me, by the way, in case you're wondering who that might have been.
Okay.
I know how that works.
So you're doing this fundraiser for Biden tomorrow. Why the fundraiser for Joe Biden? Why?
Well, I'm a lifelong Democrat.
Yeah.
And I pay a lot of taxes, and I want a government that I paid for. I want some government. I believe in government, and that's really why I'm a Democrat. Is because I think that I think this is in a democracy, a citizen has to participate, and this is how I'm called upon to participate. And I have to be very careful, because I'm not Heather Cox Richardson. I'm not either of you two. I'm not a. People don't come to me or think of me as a political savant or someone whose opinion politically is necessarily wise or to be sought. But I so I don't want to politicize my art. I think that it would be unfair of me to expect my audience to align themselves or be contrary to my political opinions. So in my performances, that I'm selling tickets to the general public for, or on my social media and stuff like that, I generally tend not to avoid my political point of view. But again, I do feel, as a citizen, I just feel compelled to respond when I'm asked for support.
But you don't subscribe to the infamous Michael Jordan Republicans buy sneakers too, obviously, or you wouldn't do this kind of thing. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I think it matters a lot to people when they respect someone's art, like so many millions of people do yours.
Right.
I think it matters what they think about it. You're not like a monolith. You don't you? I mean, maybe it's humility that's causing you to say that, but I think it does matter.
I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that I'm a Democrat. I'll say that. And it's and I have been. My first actual involvement in a political campaign was in 1972 for George McGovern, who was running against Richard Nixon, that was proudly Massachusetts was the
Knew
only
you'd
state
say,
that went
Don't
for it.
blame me. That's
Yeah.
the bumper sticker. I'm
Don't
from
blame me.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, that was a great bumper sticker that
But-
we could all have on our car, the back of our cars.
What are you going to say? You were going to say something.
Yeah. Well, no, I think after in time, someone told me about a study where they'd done polls asking people every few years, who did you vote for in that election? And after about 15 years,
Yeah, half the country.
yeah,
won the election.
He won the election.
Yeah.
I do. It was an utter rout. Was there ever a bigger landslide for? Maybe not.
I
I'm
don't
not
think
sure.
so.
Well, James Taylor, that's what everybody says about Woodstock, right? If as many people went to Woodstock as claimed they went to Woodstock, it would have been like 5 million people at Woodstock.
Or the
right?
March on Washington, for that matter.
Or the
in
March
19
on
yeah.
Washington. That's right. That's
You
right.
know, I've been waiting 55 years to have this conversation with you, James Taylor, about your first album. When I read, I was listening to I didn't even know you were coming, but I was listening to your first album, made at Apple Studios with a Beatle or two. There, what was the line? A holy host of others standing around. I thought for years it was a religious reference, not one to McCartney and Harrison hanging out and doing your thing. Caroline on my mind. Why is your first album not like high in the pantheon of whatever for you? It was huge and so great.
You know, when I actually, Peter Asher, my former manager and producer of so many of my albums, and a dear friend, when Peter recently came to me and said there's some interest in basically remastering and reissuing, re-releasing that first Beatles Apple record album, and you know, to me, I cringe a little bit when I listen to that one, because we were so raw. Maybe that's what people like about it. Actually, is that it was so, immediate and unbuffed, untouched up. But it was a work in progress, and we were really learning how to do what we did. I came to London. I made a small demo. I bought 45 minutes of studio time in a 2-track studio in Soho in London. I came away with an acetate disc and a couple of copies of reel-to-reel quarter-inch tape, and I started trying to get those placed and playing them around. And eventually, my old bandmate Danny Korchmar, who is still sort of a hub in my musical life, Danny had Peter Asher's number. I called him up in overseas telephone call to New York and got Peter's number, and Peter took a listen to it, and as luck would have it, he had just signed on as head of A&R, which is basically means he was looking for talent for this new record label. And that was just so immediately I played for Something in the Way She Moves for Paul and George in a small room in Baker
Oh my God.
in Baker Street in London, and then Paul basically said to Peter, "Well, you feel like producing an album with this guy?" And Peter said, "Yeah, that's what I have in mind," and they just green lighted it, and we green lit it or whatever. Anyway,
Whatever it is,
yeah,
we know
whatever
what
it
it
is. And so I immediately we put ads in 2 music sort of business papers. One was called the New Musical Express, NME, and the other was Melody Maker. And from those ads, we got a number of responses for keyboard player and bass player. That's what I was looking for. And I auditioned many players. It was a painful process. But at the end, just kidding, really, at the end, a guy named Don Shin on keyboards and a guy named Louis Sanamo on bass, sort of came into the studio with us, and we started to put these things down. And, it was not as though we got in touch with a famous hit maker, producer, and charted out the songs and contracted for the best musicians in town. We really did it at a very, Peter basically trusted me to to make the music. And you know, to me, it's got a lot of rough edges. That
Well,
first
so
album.
let's go quickly from unbuffed to ultra buffed. What do you think about Now and Then? I mean, after the A&I doing and two
The
Beatles are
Beatles'
no
new
longer
song?
the Beatles'
Yeah.
new song.
Yeah.
They, with obviously Ringo and Paul are with us, and obviously George Harrison and John
Yeah, AI
Lennon are
songs.
not.
Oh, God.
What do you? Is that?
I think that we'll you know, hopefully we'll all be working long after we die.
But we're
Well,
talking
yeah,
to James Taylor. Obviously,
is-
he's doing an event tomorrow night for the President of the United States. Tell you how to get tickets in a minute if that's your cup of tea.
You talk a lot about your young life and starting out as a musician, and the memoir you did, Break Shot, which I listened to a while ago. It's been out a couple of years now, hasn't it? Several
Yes,
years,
yeah,
several
yeah,
years
it-
now.
yep.
But you talked about growing up, and you talked about your dad going off. I think it was Antarctica or something he went to when you moved from here down to, was it North Carolina?
We did.
Yeah.
We moved from Boston, where he had been studying medicine and then a resident at MGH, and then he met my mom, and they started cranking out a family, and he moved us all down to North Carolina, and then within a couple of years, he had been the military had picked up. Done a rain check on his service. They had allowed him to finish his medical degree while the war was going on, but they said, we'll be back. And they did. They came back. They drafted him into the Navy. He was serving at Bethesda Naval Hospital and coming home on weekends. We saw him pretty frequently, but he really didn't like it at Bethesda. He had always been a huge follower of the great polar explorers, and I think it says something about him psychologically that was his sort of that was in his internal picture of himself as a man against the elements, and Shackleton and Amundsen and Scott and Admiral Byrd, who had been to the Antarctic American expedition, was putting together another expedition to go down and build the base at McMurdo Sound, the scientific base, and it was part of something called the International Geophysical Year, which was 1956. Anyway, Dad volunteered. It was just.
He was gone for 2 years.
And he was
wasn't
gone.
it?
Yeah.
And
In
Mom
those
was left
days,
to
yeah.
raise everybody.
Well, my mom was moved down to North Carolina, and she was from Newburyport, Massachusetts. A very progressive, liberal Yankee, and we went down to North Carolina, and she was that was a real culture shock for my mom.
Yeah,
And
the whole thing.
Yeah.
Break Shot was really fascinating to listen to. It talked a little bit about your association with the Beatles there too. But I probably should have known this before, but I didn't. I just read this story today in preparation for talking to you. Speaking of the Beatles, about John Lennon's murder in New York City. You lived right near the Dakota. Tell us the story.
Well, I was on the phone to my manager's wife, and we were talking about. She said things are crazy here. Now, I believe that Lynette Squeaky Frome her trial had been on, or there had been some probation hearing
Who tried
or
to kill Ford.
parole
Yeah.
thing. I'm not sure what it was, but there was another resurgence in the popular culture of the Manson phenomena and stuff. And she said things are crazy here in Los Angeles. And at that point, I was sitting by my window in New York, in a building called the Langham. That's the next one up from the Dakota. I was the window was open, and I was sitting there talking on the phone to her. And from out in the street, I hear 5 shots.
Oh my gosh.
It sounded to me like a large caliber weapon, and I had been told before that when the police do a shooting, that they keep an empty chamber under their hammer and the revolver, but then they empty the pistol. When they use it, they empty it. And I said to her, "You think it's crazy there? I've just heard the police kill somebody down on the street." And she rang off and then called me back 20 minutes later and said that was not a police shooting. That was John Lennon's just been shot. So
But you ran into Chapman.
I did. I ran into Chapman the day before.
What happened?
I was coming out of the subway at 72nd Street and Central Park West. This guy attached himself to me, obviously
Recognized me,
was talking about a mile a minute. It's sort of a sheen of sweat on him. His eyes were sort of, frighteningly dilated and burning, and clearly the guy was in an altered state. And I just was, trying to scrape him off, trying to get up and get to the building just one up from the Dakota. I can't even remember. He was talking about projects he had going, how he was in touch with John Lennon, and there was something that he really just verbiage flowing out of the guy, and I got clear of him as I went into my building to the Langham, and that it was just like, whew.
I want to get back to current events before I do, since you mentioned Shackleton. Maybe the greatest quote ever made about a human being. This is from Sir Raymond Priestley. For scientific discovery, give me Scott. For speed and efficiency of travel, give me Amundsen. But when disaster strikes and all hope is gone, get down on your knees and pray for Shackleton. Yeah. And if people want to read about the endurance, the boat being stuck in the ice, how every single person was saved, it's incredible.
Was it 2 years or something
2 years,
like
yeah.
that?
Can we get back to current events for a second? Are you nervous when you're going to be singing with Biden there? I watched you and your wife. We got to play this, by the way. You're singing at the White House for a piece of legislation, the Inflation Reduction Act. Obviously, it's because you care about climate change. Here's a little bit of James and Kim Taylor singing You Can Close Your Eyes at the White House in September of last year, again, in honor of a piece of legislation, the Inflation Reduction Act. Here it is.
For the sun is surely sinking down, but the moon is slowly rising. So this whole world must still be
What a
spinning
incredible,
round.
beautiful song. So I know you've only given like 40,000 concerts. You're nervous. You and Obama became quite close. Obviously, I think people know that. Obviously, you feel an affinity towards Joe Biden. Are you nervous when you're singing for a president?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah. Well, I'm nervous when I sing.
You are?
I am. Yeah. I am.
Wait, when you get up at a normal concert, you were nervous?
You get better at dealing with those nerves, but and there are ways to get through it. You can choose material that's very high energy and that does something with your nerves, but no, usually that's my main challenge is to how to get around that nervousness and start enjoying myself there.
Was it you're wearing a Ted Williams Red Sox hat? So is it like sports? Would most athletes say the second the ball is thrown or the first rebound, once you play a note or two, does it all disappear? Or no.
That's sort of true because I can't imagine, for instance, being a stand-up comedian
and
not
terrifying
and not having the not having the guitar and the music and
between
the
you, you mean
the function between you and the audience.
And what if they don't laugh at the first joke?
Absolutely.
You're totally screwed, right?
It's true,
Well, Jim told me, James Taylor, that when he saw you at Tanglewood, that when you were done,
July 4th.
the women rushed the stage. So I guess they didn't notice your nervousness. I thought that was pretty damn good.
I don't.
Oh yes, don't even try. They rushed the stage.
That's
and you know what you
said.
did? I said this to you when you were sitting here before we started. The only other performer I've ever seen do what you did was Willie Nelson. You were about to go to intermission. You stood there the whole damn time, missed the whole intermission. The second set started late because every single person who wanted either a picture or an autograph, every single one, you spent time with. Why do you do that?
It's just it started. What happens is someone will have a something they want to give to me from the audience or a album cover they'd like me to sign. I walk over and sign it, and then there's someone next to them, and then before you know it, it's you've got a line of people, and it's just hard to cut it off. It's
yeah, but I, as an intrepid reporter, came close. I did not rush the stage. I was listening to you in heaven, I should say, but I approached, and you weren't just doing it because there was another person. My sense, I don't want to read your, is you felt like I have an obligation to people who care enough to come see me to give something additional to them because they want. I mean, that's what's in your mind, isn't it?
Well, no, yes. That's true. I do, and that's where the nervousness comes from. Is the sense that, here's some guy who's gotten tickets for himself and his wife or his date, or herself and her husband, and they've gotten a babysitter, and they've probably come to the Berkshires for the weekend, and all in all, this is a major sort of event that they've done to be there at that concert, and I feel responsible for that. The time that people have and the attention that they've given me,
shows.
and so it and that multiplies by how many people are there. So that you do get a sense of kind of obligation or trying to live up to this thing, or the impossibility of it. But at any rate, but the other thing about making contact with the individual audience members is that it makes the second half of the show so much better.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you've made a connection, and you've also, sometimes you go to see somebody and you're not sure whether or not, is this person, particularly someone who's done it many, many times and is sort of known. You come to see them and you get the feeling, is this a drag that they have to be here doing this? Are they not enjoying this? I mean, there's no bigger Miles Davis fan than I, but I went to see him once in Australia, and he didn't come out on the stage for half an hour after the band started to play for half an hour. They vamped for half an hour before he came out. When he came out, he turned his back to us. He played "Mary Had a Little Lamb" or "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" on the, and it was really just to give us the finger. And
well, you were giving nobody the finger. You were giving everybody a hug, literally and figuratively. And it's really a wonderful. You don't need to hear it from me, but it's a great quality, and it's. But
it also there's also that element that you get from live performance, which is that you've got this everybody's come together to have a sort of a communal emotional experience in a way, and something's going on there that has to do that feels like church, and it feels like, but it also feels like a festival or a bacchanal or something. I mean, it doesn't. It feels joyous. It feels deep, and it's deeply compelling, and it pulls me back in, and connecting with the audience is essential to that, because what you hope to do is be ready, have your game together, have your voice, your guitar, your band, your arrangements, the flow of the night, the energy of it, the way it's staged, the lighting, all of those things. You hope to have all of those things ready to perform, and then what you're hoping is that out of doing that sort of setup, that this other thing will emerge, and there will be these moments in the evening where you actually have this cooperative thing that goes on, which is, cooperation is the human advantage. It's like the fact that we can to me, civilization is cooperation among strangers. That's like the definition.
I like that.
And our ability to cooperate with more on a larger and larger level is that's why I get so distressed by seeing people who see it as to their political advantage to divide us, is to make us dislike one another and distrust one another. It really disgusts me.
James Taylor, you're exactly who I hoped you were going to be. I'll tell you, you were something. And by the way,
now before he leaves.
Well, before he does, I just want to say, if people want to see James tomorrow night performing for his friend Joe Biden, it's JT for FORJBDEC as in December 5th, JT for JBDEC5.eventbrite.com. Now, before you go, I was watching this morning, you get the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama. And by the way, you know what's beautiful about it? I don't know if you ever watched yourself. You look like a little boy. You look so, I'm serious. I mean that in a loving way. You look so happy and honored and whatever. So in that spirit, Marjorie, you have something you want to say to Mr. Taylor here?
Now, Jim hoards these in his basement and has refused to give them out to many worthy guests
correct.
we've had before. But he made an exception.
I did,
I'm not
for
sure
James
why,
Taylor.
but
That's
he did. I
correct.
guess he really is crazy about you, James Taylor, because he made an exception. So today, I'm presenting you with the famous Smug Mug here at GBH. But Jim says you can get an extra prize if you take a look at it and figure out why it might be called the Smug Mug.
Why do we call it the
They're in
Smug
hot
Mug,
demand.
James Taylor? Go ahead. Can you figure it out? Go ahead. We're waiting.
You're looking in the right
We're
place,
waiting.
I think.
Well, I mean,
You can say it.
there's
Don't be embarrassed.
there's a certain detachment in your demeanor.
It's not called
Yeah.
the Detach Mug. It's
You
called
mean-
the Smug Mug, my
I mean, the
friend.
connection and cooperation doesn't seem to be there in the face of Mr. Browdy and the Smug Mug.
Are you honored or you're not honored? You're not saying anything. I mean, come on.
I'm speechless.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm deeply honored. Thank you. If
Yeah.
you're left-handed, you get to see Marjorie.
That's right.
Exactly.
If you're right-handed,
Yeah.
A lot of
you get
left-handed
That was a
people
few years
these
ago
days.
with a lot of makeup on, but we give it out anyway.
Hey, James, it was a thrill to have you, and we really appreciate your time. I hope you come back.
I would love to come back.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you
okay.
so much. This is a big thrill. I'm a big celebrity now by being next to a celebrity today.
And thank
We're
Kim,
speaking
too. She was great
with
to us. We really appreciate it. She's great.
multi-platinum, multi-Grammy winning legendary singer-songwriter James Taylor is performing tomorrow night right here in Boston at a fundraiser with President Joe Biden. Thank you again so much for coming in, James
You're welcome,
Taylor.
James.
Marjorie, Jim, thank you.